It's good to see everybody here today. Glad everybody was able to make it, and um, glad we're able to gather here. It's such a blessing to be able to be here in this space and gather together and do this every week. And I wanted to just share a message this week because we've finished up our series going through these different disciplines that we can practice in our lives to grow our relationship closer to God. And, each week we gave you a challenge to kind of initiate that first step of those areas that we can have discipline in our lives. And we also gave some different steps. So no matter where you were at, there was somewhere you could do a little bit more stretching, a little bit more growing with God. And then this week, I wanted to give you a message that kind of shares what we do once we've worked on those things in these areas of our lives, once we've grown these things. What do we do next, right? Because we're practicing these things, we're growing our relationship with God, but God doesn't want us to stop there. So this message, if you're taking notes, the title of this message is Disciple on God's Path. All right. So we're going to be in John 1 today. We're going to be we'll read a few verses at a time, and we'll be going verse 35 through 51 today. So that'll be the second half of John 1, if you'd like to follow along. And so I'm going to start reading in John 1, verse 35. The following day, John was again standing with two of his disciples. As Jesus walked by, John looked at him and declared, "Look, there is the Lamb of God." When John's two disciples heard this, they followed Jesus. All right, so there's a few things I want to break down there to kind of set up the things that follow after this. So John was sent, he was a cousin of Jesus, and he was sent prior to Jesus to proclaim that Jesus was coming and to make a way for things to come. So John came first. He started his ministry before Jesus, and he declared that Jesus was coming, essentially. And so when it was Jesus' time and his ministry was about to start, John started declaring that here he is, here's the one that I've been talking about this whole time, right? So the next thing we need to talk about is it's talking about disciples here, and what exactly is a disciple? So the definition of a disciple is a follower or student of a teacher, leader, or philosopher. So pretty much somebody who's trying to teach you something, give you an idea or a concept of something, or lead you somewhere. If you're following them or following their teachings or being a student of that, then you are being a disciple at that time. So that's where people were listening to John, people were following John. John had disciples. And then we commonly hear this word disciple in reference to the 12 disciples, right, that followed and walked with Jesus closely. Those 12 disciples are also referred to as apostles. Apostles, the difference between apostles and disciples are apostles were specifically sent by Jesus. So Jesus handpicked and hand chose those people and sent them. That makes you an apostle. But if you choose to follow Jesus and his teaching and you desire to be a follower of Jesus, then you are a disciple of Jesus. So that's kind of how we separate those things. And today we're able to be disciples of Jesus through following his word we find in the Bible and following the teachings found there. So if you're a follower of Jesus, it makes you a disciple. You can't be an apostle today because Jesus doesn't come down, handpick us, and send us. That was something he did when he was alive on earth. And so we can't be apostles now, but we can still be disciples. So that's what we're here doing. That's why we come to church, is learning how to follow Jesus better and understand better his teachings. Verse 38. Jesus looked and saw them following. "What do you want?" he asked them. They replied, "Rabbi," which means teacher, where are you staying?" Verse 39. "Come and see," he said. It was about 4:00 in the afternoon when they went with him to the place where he was staying, and they remained with him the rest of the day. So here's something we see commonly in Jesus' ministry. He's very often like, if you're curious about what is happening, come along with me, right? He does that very frequently. He doesn't like to tell people to go away. He's like, if you want to see what God is doing, come along with me, and we'll be a part of that. He does that because he doesn't want people to just hear about God's goodness. He wants them to witness it, right? Because some of us are like, we hear something and we're good with that, but other ones of us, we actually have to see it, right? So Jesus wants these people to see the goodness of God through Jesus's life. So the only way to do that is to invite people into your life and to allow them to experience that with you. So that's exactly what Jesus does here. The other side we see here are the people being discipled. So to be discipled, you have to be open and willing to be taught by the teacher. In this case, these disciples were already open to that. That's made clear because they were already disciples of John. They were following John, and now John's saying, this is the one I've been talking about. So now they're open to Jesus' teaching. Again, John making that way for Jesus to be that teacher. Jesus would have been successful because he's the Son of God, but John made it a lot easier because people were ready. They were prepared to receive what Jesus had to offer through John's ministry. And then we're going to go into verse 40. Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, was one of these men who heard what John said and then followed Jesus. Andrew went to find his brother Simon and told him, "We have found the Messiah," which means Christ. In verse 42, then Andrew brought Simon to meet Jesus. Looking intently at Simon, Jesus said, "Your name is Simon, son of John, but you will be called..." Hold on, guys. I had to do this whole, I was in school this morning over this word. And I lost it. It's all gone. I knew that was going to happen because I'm on the spot now. It's crazy pronunciation because none of the letters that are here make that sound in this word. So it's Cephas. I'm a little off, I think, but it's close. Pretty close. So it's got like a Z sound in it. It's a lot happening. I tried to get it right, but it just went completely blank up here. So y'all just have to, Google it and listen to it. That's what I did. So that's close enough. But he goes by Peter. That's what we're going to see his name as. So this is Simon. His name gets changed to this, which means rock. His name is Peter. So what's cool about this is that Andrew reaches out to his brother, Simon, so Simon is able to experience the same discipleship that he has experienced. So he's so excited about what he's experienced through John and now witnessing Jesus and experiencing this discipleship of Jesus and getting to walk alongside Jesus that he goes and he's like, "My brother, you have to be a part of this," right? And so that's something we do the same thing, right? When we realize how great the gift of Jesus is in our life and we get excited about it, we want everybody to know about it. And I still, our kids are so, I see it a lot, especially with our kids, because they haven't gotten their feelings hurt about sharing about Jesus yet, right? So they're like, everybody they see, they're like, "Let me tell you about Jesus, and you got to come to church on Sunday." As adults, we're a little more hesitant, right? Because they're like, they're going to call me Bible thumper, and they're not going to want to be around me. They're going to think I'm the weird guy who reads the Bible and all those things. We get our feelings hurt about it. But when we first get saved, we have that excitement about sharing, and that's what we really should have, is this excitement of Jesus. And that's exactly what Andrew's experiencing here, is he's got that excitement about meeting Jesus for the first time and getting to know Jesus, and he wants everybody important to him in his life around him to know. So his first person he reaches out to is his brother Simon. In verse 43, the next day Jesus decided to go to Galilee, and he found Philip and said, "Come, follow me." Philip was from Bethsaida, Andrew and Peter's hometown. So these connections continue to grow and connect. God had set these connections up and connected us to more people. These people, these connections that happened, God had set these things up even before Jesus had come into their life. So at this point, we got Andrew, whose brother is Simon. Now they're in their hometown because they're like, we got to pick up Simon. And while they're picking up Simon, Jesus runs into Philip and he's like, "Hey, Philip, you ought to come along for the ride." And Philip's like, "Yeah, that sounds great." So we see how this network starts to grow, this discipleship, how it grows. In verse 45, Philip went to look for Nathanael and told him, "We have found the very person Moses and the prophets wrote about. His name is Jesus, the son of Joseph from Nazareth." Verse 46, "Nazareth," exclaimed Nathanael, "can anything good come from Nazareth? Come and see for yourself." Philip replied. So this is the first opportunity where we see Nathanael. He's not as excited to hear about, his initial response isn't like, wow, this is amazing. We finally found the Messiah. He's like, Nazareth, are you sure? Does anything actually good come from there? So Nazareth wasn't a big town. It wasn't a place known for, or a place where you would have thought that a famous or well-known person would have come from. So that's what kind of had that initial response. But that's how God works. He used the lowly, he used the unexpected, he used the smaller things. He didn't just, it's not Jesus born son of a wealthy person and all these great things happened his whole life. He showed how God can work in the small things and the little things, the unexpected things, and that's exactly what's happening here. This is an unexpected place for the Messiah to come from for Nathanael. As they approached, Jesus said, "Now here is a genuine son of Israel, a man of complete integrity." Verse 48. "How could you know that about me?" Nathanael asked. Jesus replied, "I could see you under the fig tree before Philip found you." Then Nathanael exclaimed, "Rabbi, you are the Son of God, the King of Israel." So when Nathanael experienced this was Jesus performing a miracle. He was able to tell Nathanael where he was, even like recall this moment of Nathanael's life without witnessing it. And so at that time, Nathanael knew that Jesus had this supernatural ability, this supernatural power, that he recognized that this was the Son of God in the Messiah. So then his whole attitude changed in this moment. And so in verse 50, it says, Jesus asked him, "Do you believe just because I told you I had seen you under the fig tree? You see greater things than this." Then he said, "I tell you the truth. You will all see heaven open up and the angels of God going up and down on the Son of Man, the one who is the stairway between heaven and earth." So there's a few things I want to take away from this passage of Scripture. And there's two parts to discipleship that I want to go through with everybody. The first is having a relationship with someone. This is if you're the person being discipled. Having a relationship with someone that you're willing to learn from and willing to grow from. So you want to find somebody wise in your life. This is usually an older person than yourself, but it doesn't always have to be that case. It's somebody who has more knowledge than you about the topic, because you can't, I'm not going to go to Brantley and learn about how to put together or work on a computer, right? He's going to come to me and ask me how to work on a computer. You go to people who are more experienced for these areas of life. So you find somebody in your life who's more experienced and better understanding of being a follower of Christ. And that's our responsibility. This applies to all of us. We need to find those people in our life and be willing to be discipled by them, right? The second part is following the example of bringing people around you and alongside you to walk and help them grow in their relationship. And this part comes as we grow in maturity. So if you get saved today or next week, you're not going to be like, all right, I need to bring everybody around me and I'm going to teach them everything there is to know about being a Christian, right? Because you don't even know what you're doing yet. You just made this big decision in your life and your whole life is changing. You can't teach other people how to change their lives when your life is just starting to change, right? So, but as you mature in your relationship, you have that responsibility as you grow in your relationship with Christ to follow this example that Jesus has given us and bring people into your life, open up your life, open up your home to them so they can experience and witness Christ. So this is not something, we all do right away, but it is something we should be working to grow into. And that's kind of where these disciplines kind of apply is, we don't want to, if you're not giving at all, if you're not showing good stewardship, you're not going to start telling people how to stewardship their money. But if you work on that in your life and you grow that area of your life and you get it into a good place with God, then you are in a place where you've matured in that area of your life. And then you're able to encourage and work with others to grow them to that area. Same thing if you're like, I'd rather just stay at home and have my own relationship with Christ, you're not showing good fellowship. You're not being with the body of believers. But if you are intentional about gathering together and you like that, then you should invite those people struggle with those things to be a part of what's happening. You help people grow in different areas towards Christ by discipling them in this way and opening up when you mature in these different areas. So, John, as an example, would not have been able to lead disciples if he had not recognized that Jesus was the Son of God. He would not have been able to have disciples and lead them well towards Christ if he did not have this basic understanding that Jesus was the Son of God. In the same way, we have to need a firm understanding of who Jesus is and what he expects of us before we can start to disciple others, right? So we can't start discipling without having a good understanding. But there are some areas in our lives that we need to be prepared to disciple and disciple well. And so I've got 3 areas I want to talk about where we can disciple. And the first one is in the home. So if you have children, or if you don't have children, if you plan to have children one day, they grow and they follow the example you model, right? So how many people who as a parent can say that your children act like you at some point? It may not be every day or all day, but they have traits that they have picked up from you, right? So good or bad, they have picked up some traits. Usually we always see the bad ones, right? And we don't want to take credit for that, but they do pick up some traits from us as they witness and they watch us live life. They are picking up these things. And so these things are happening in our home. They're watching us. They're seeing what we do. And if we, whatever we do, we're seeing our children pick up the same thing. And when I was looking at this, I was thinking about this example of sitting. We read a book, and my wife and I did when we were dating, and it brought up this conversation about what dinner time looked like in our households growing up. And it was so important because this little thing that we don't think of could have made such a big deal in our home. And so when I was growing up, we were busy between dance and my sister doing dance and horse riding and me doing soccer and track or cross country, whatever I was doing at the time. Sometimes dinner just looked like whatever you could throw in the microwave and sit down in front of the TV to spend a little family time before you're doing homework and going to bed, right? Ashley's family, on the other hand, they had dinner ready at 5 o'clock or earlier every day. And so that's what they sat around the dinner table. Their mom had time to prepare a nice 3 to 5 course meal, depending on the day. And so that was the expectation for her growing up as an adult. She's like, we're going to have a 3 to 5 course meal and we're having dinner at this time and you're going to sit down at the dinner table. And that's what that time is going to look like. For me, I'm like, we can sit in front of the TV. We can sit at the dinner table as long as we eat. I'm good with whatever dinner looks like. But if I went into this expectation of growing up and just being like, let's just throw something on the microwave and go about our day, then Ashley would have been like, what's happening? And our children, so that's something I picked up from my home of just being like, we can do meals however they look as long as we eat. Ashley's discipleship that she received in her home is the importance of sitting around the dinner table. And so it affects how we grow up in our thought processes that we have as adults. So that's some different ways. That's an easy one. There's a lot of things. Like I said, we can think about all those bad habits that we have and what our children pick up from that. But we want to make sure we're modeling good habits that we're discipling in the home that we're doing there. And so, like I said, these things are important. That if you have children or plan to have children, keep this in mind because they are going to pick these things up from the people they are around in their home. Number 2 is with our friends. So this could be our friend groups. It could be coworkers. These are like people who are around on a regular basis, but they're not in the home necessarily. So we can all probably think of someone close to us, again, whether it's a friend or a coworker, that lacks the hope and purpose that can be found through a relationship with Jesus, right? I think we could all probably think of at least one person. And we can bring our friends and these co-workers or these people close to us closer to God through living out our relationship with Christ day to day. People will notice that, and God will set you apart. And so, an example of this in my life was when I worked in Fredericksburg in the warehouse I was working at with my coworkers. Like, they used to call me preacher. Like, I didn't just sit around and preach every day, but if they wanted to have a conversation, that conversation was going to lead to a conversation about God, because that's what was important to me. And they knew that. And because of that, people were comfortable coming and talking to me and asking me questions. I've had questions asked about being baptized and what my faith means, and why they would need that, different things like that. And people noticed that. They ended up giving me this nickname of preacher because God had set me apart. People had noticed that about me, that there was something different about me than the next person, and it was God working through me and in their lives. And so that impact might not have been a huge impact, like might not have modeled directly after me in the same way we have our children modeling after us, but those things have impacts, lasting impacts that over time make a difference and leave an impression. And then the third area is in the community. So nothing sells somebody's character more than how you treat someone that you may never see again, right? So like if we're like, look, I'm driving behind this person, they're going 30 miles an hour, I'm never going to see them again, I'm going to lay on the horn because I have somewhere to be, but they apparently do not, right? Any interaction with a stranger is an opportunity to live out your relationship with Christ, right? As an example of this, it could look like praying for someone or stopping and helping someone in need who's having a bad day. These type of actions create ripple effects in people's lives. So what this ripple looks like is, when you throw a rock into a pond and you see those little waves or these ripples spread out, like you don't necessarily see where that ripple goes on the other side of the pond, but it is out there somewhere making an impact on this water, right? The water's not still anymore. And so you may never see these people again or know what comes of the situation that happened, but they will move forward having this story of that time when someone stopped and shared God's love with me. And so these things can be really important, and even the littlest things we do can have an impact. And in Ashley and I's life, it's incredible to see, we have youth kids come through and things like that we've worked with in the past. And sometimes we're like, whatever happened to them? Haven't heard from them for years. And then out of nowhere, we'll get a phone call or we'll get a message or we'll run into them on the street. And we're like, I'm so thankful for the time you spent in my life being intentional with me. And so it really does make an impact over time. And so God's constantly creating opportunities in our life to bring people into a relationship with Christ. And these verses that we just read through, this section of Scripture, they started with John, who had a follower, Andrew, who chose to leave and go with Jesus. So that was the first thing that happened. Then Andrew went to go get his brother Peter. And so Andrew and Peter, they went to Andrew and Peter's hometown, where Jesus meets Philip and asks to follow him, and shares the good news with Nathanael, who doesn't receive it well at first, but his life would be changed when he experienced Jesus for himself. So because of these actions of just a few people, 4 people's lives changed forever because they just happened to be in the right place at the right time. God had lined these things up for these connections to happen. And these 4 people, all starting with John doing his purpose and following his purpose, saying, hey, there's Jesus, go follow him, led to 4 people following Jesus and being some of his closest disciples throughout his ministry. And by the way, Jesus had way more than 12 disciples, but it was 12 of them that he spent very intentional time with, that he lived very close life with, and then other disciples that followed him in his teachings. And so God creates opportunities like this in our lives all the time. We're not always going to recognize them, but we need to be listening to what God's will is in our life so that when the opportunities do present themselves, we don't let them pass by. We need to take advantage of these opportunities and allow these impacts that we have in our lives to have impacts for Christ instead of just allowing them to pass by, because these little ripple effects that we could have opportunities of each day, if we just let them go by, then that's people that's not eventually maybe hearing the message of Christ or hearing or experiencing God's love. So I want to leave you with this today. If you don't take anything else away from this, I want you to know this, that God does not have you here today by accident. If it is your first day, or if you come every week, if you are here because someone loves you and wants you to be here with them, or because you made a wrong turn and thought you were going somewhere else today, it is not a mistake that you came here today. God has a plan for you that is bigger than anyone can see, and all we need to do is choose to be a part of it. And so this is something I like to share at the end of our messages every once in a while, and that's just the message of why we're here. We're here because we are sinners, and the debt we owe for that sin is death, right? And Jesus paid that debt for us. He rose again after 3 days. Jesus died not because he deserved to, but because he died for our sins. And today the old you can pass away. The things that are sinful in you can die, and you can be renewed in Jesus Christ and allow Jesus to be that gift in your life that takes those things away from you. And you can live a new life as a child of God. And everybody needs this free gift of Jesus in their life.